Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm wishing you a lovely morning wherever you're at. It's nice and sunny outside, which I appreciate for sure. And I'm going to be talking to you a little bit today about youth voice, my own personal experience, my experience through some research I've taken on. And I do actually have a physical presentation, which I believe the screen will be sharing super soon. And as if by magic, wonderful. So please do feel free to notify me in the chat if at any point you can't hear me or if the screen goes off or anything like that, as I can no longer see anybody. Perfect. So without further ado, Youth Voice, a reflective provocation. Today I'm going to be talking a little bit about my background, what youth voice means to me. I will also be reflecting on a study I took on for the Mighty Creatives entitled Let's Talk Youth Voice, and I will be talking a little bit about my opinion and what I think is exciting for the future of youth voice work. So, a little bit about me. I am a 22-year-old queer and care experienced person from Derbyshire, and I first got involved with the work of DSEP, so Derby's SEP, at the age of 16, shortly after entering the care system, which was obviously a very, very difficult time for me, a very kind of life changing moment, and really having a support system such as DSEP enter during that time was very essential to kind of help me form into the person that I am today. When I turned 18, as I say, the support I received helped me to secure a university placement offer from the Academy of Contemporary Music in Guildford. I moved to Greater London to study and completed my degree from 2017 until 2019. When returning home to the Midlands right after, I became a self employed composer and I now work with international clients as a songwriter and composer, a vocalist, a multi instrumentalist, and a producer slash arranger, which is all very, very exciting indeed. I have also facilitated young people through SEP work myself and had the opportunity to be a springboard for other creatives' ideas, which is also such an honouring process. And I'm a member of Esme Fairbairn's Young People's Network, campaigning for equality and support in entitlements for care experienced young people. And most recently, I was contracted as a researcher by the Mighty Creatives to complete a youth voice study. So that's a little bit about where I'm at right now, and how this has informed my youth voice is as follows. So, my opinions on youth voice in general and how I perceive youth voice prior to the research study involve the following points. So, the importance of youth voice for marginalised and minoritized communities is very prevalent to me as a queer and care experienced person myself. Therefore, prioritising accessibility feels incredibly essential. Empowering young people who have been subjected to systemic disadvantages, equaling out the playing field, and supporting diverse representation in creative industries feels especially important. From what we all see, our own lived experience, we all know that there's a lot of balancing to do within the industries we work in, even though we are still making progress. The importance of social pedagogy as a mode of address towards young people is very prevalent to me. To embed the comfort of young people within communication and the delivery of projects, and understanding the adaptability needed to meet the individualized needs of young people is also highly essential. Something that may have been beneficial to me may be completely counterproductive to another person. So taking all of those considerations into account feel very relevant. The importance of maintaining consistency and allowing young people's voices to be heard is also a very important point to consider. Providing young people with sustainability in communication and access to opportunities, reminding young people that LSEPs are there to support them through many of the early defining stages in their lives, primary school to post university. Consistency, especially for those in marginalised and minoritized communities, is such an important factor to show worth in the young person, to show that you value them, and that their value doesn't change as they grow older or experience new things in their lives, which yes, next point. So the importance of manifesting creative trust in young people through co-creation, co-production, this really allows LSEPs to invest in the creativity of young people and their decision making, um, and allowing young people to follow through from creative experience to paid work placements is also very important, as I have experienced myself. Um, from going through DSEP and being a musically interested person to now being a full-time composer. So let's talk a little bit about the research project that I recently took on from December of last year to March of this year. So Let's Talk Youth Voice is a qualitative research study commissioned by the Mighty Creatives to explore youth voice and how it has been embedded within the work of LSEPs in East Midlands over the past year. So this research study explores 6 of the 7 LSEPs in the East Midlands, specifically analysing the views of one representative coordinator per SEP, using the Lundy model as guidance for successful and sustainable youth voice practice. With the planning, data collection, delivery, and reflective stages of this research, great consideration was given for the fact that COVID-19 and the pandemic has been highly prevalent upon the workings of all parties involved, so myself, the SEPs, the young people. And the original intention for this research, with this in mind, was to also interview and speak with the young people themselves, as it's obviously youth voice, and that doesn't kind of stop at the coordinators. It's all about the young people, really. So the sample size turnout was too small with the young people for me to be able to draw data from them precisely and develop trends. So the following information should be considered as such as a observation rather than from the horse's mouth, let's say. So we have a little representation of the Lundy model right here, just in case you guys are unfamiliar, which covers the key areas of space, voice, audience, and influence. They all have a chronological order, however, are entirely related to one another. Um, Sorry, you're a tiny bit zoomed in, which I'm aware because the model is quite small, so thank you for doing that. However, please may you zoom out for me? Perfect, thank you. So this model is intended to focus on decision makers and the distinct kind of interrelated elements of provision. They are all kind of related, and this allows young people, all these 4 elements together, to have a safe space for youth voice to flourish. And that's what I was basically using to look at in this research. Perfect, thank you. So what I found, I obviously will not be going through all of our findings today, as we have a lot of findings, that's for sure. So I'm just going to give you a few brief little summaries. So the successful elements of existing youth voice work in space. The concepts of physical and emotional spaces are established when considering the spaces that LSEPs share with young people, which is wonderful, as obviously a physical space and an emotional space are so heavily interrelated that they deserve equal importance and equal attention. LSEP's adaptability to online planning, delivery, and reflection methods has allowed opportunities for young people to be sustained to varying extents through the COVID-19 pandemic, which is wonderful. As we all know, when times are difficult for us all, the sustainability and the consistency is something that is essential, even more so than in non-COVID times. So the online space has allowed LSEPs to harness new advantages into their youth voice work, such as a wider locational access to opportunities, the recording of meetings via Zoom, and the many levels of participation and collaboration features available within Zoom, other VoIP methods, and basically non-social close interaction. So moving on to voice. Methods of ensuring young people's voices are welcomed and facilitated by LSEPs are underpinned by the safeguarding and protection policies in place and followed through by friendly and experienced facilitators and coordinators, which is obviously very, very important and highly essential. But sometimes I think we forget that the general welcomeness and mannerisms of a person can really affect especially vulnerable young people. And whether that be positively or negatively, it's still a highly important factor. So there is also a clear recognition amongst LSEPs of their responsibility to appropriately relay information to young people in order to invite them into new opportunities and to inform their creative decisions. And this also drew light to the importance of equalising this process, respecting the boundaries of young people participating within their LSEP, and offering consistency where possible. As this research obviously intended to speak to young people, but this was not possible due to their time constraints and the time constraints of the research, constraints caused by the physical space of Zoom. This obviously, you can imply that young people therefore need some of their own space, as it can be a busy time, a stressful time. And as important as consistency and sustainability is, it's also important to realize if young people want to take a step back, then that is absolutely as valid as them participating in a project, for sure, especially during this time. So moving on to audience, the shared ethos of LSEPs on the importance of listening to young people suggests the neutrality of LSEPs as an audience. LSEPs have been building a larger community network of individuals and organisations to act as a wider audience to young people's voices, implying the benefits of allowing access to multiple audiences across sectors to ensure young people are being listened to by those best placed to act upon their views. And this is something that I found to be super important. It's great to know that the cross-sector connections are growing and they're there and they are to support people in all aspects of their lives, you know, creative and beyond, which we all know as creatives we may need because we put so much love and passion into our work, and that manifests in other ways too that we need support with. So that's great to know. Now moving on to influence, LSEPs report great consideration for the introduction of youth employability schemes and professional opportunities for young people, demonstrating the influence of young people on LSEPs and vice versa, and allowing young people to influence their communities, which is something that honestly really warmed my heart to hear about from those who took part, to hear about how young people are impacting their towns, their cities, their local families and friends through the work that they do with LSEPs. And that's certainly been the case for me also, way before this research ever happened. So it's great to know that that work is continuing and is at the forefront of LSEP's priorities. So many LSEP coordinators described robust methods of embedding feedback loops within their work. So the idea of recording, retaining, and implementing the ideas of young people, documenting young people's views, and evidencing young people's influence upon LSEP's opportunities. So, elements of youth voice work which might require a little bit of further consideration. So on space, the research indicated need for further studies into the elements of space, as LSEPs generally established that each of their plans for development of the processes of providing space have been paused or obstructed by COVID-19, which again is completely understandable. Our ability to inhabit physical spaces has changed entirely. So that has thrown a huge spanner in the works, understandably. As some LSEPs do not directly deliver projects and programs themselves, there is a need to establish how partnerships that work in this way can still have an effect on the physical and emotional spaces that young people experience in taking part, for example, within schools. So if an LSEP doesn't specifically deliver a project to a young person, how do they guarantee that the spaces that they inhabit are more than just obviously suitable for the work that's taking place, and how can that space feel different, for example, if it's in a school to ordinary school work? And the online physical space has proved to be far less accessible to the full scope of young people, especially those who are specified as coming from low socioeconomic backgrounds and or minoritized communities. Therefore, it's totally necessary to sustain communication with young people via multiple methods. as many of us have learned, young people react completely differently to being online, depending on their personal contexts or what they have accessible to them. And this is a learning curve for all of us right now, for sure, to learn what's best for those young people. So moving on to voice, the research notes. Sorry, I think I am going a little slowly. Perfect. So I'll speed through this final part. The element of audience appeared to be less informed upon within the LSEPs, who don't act as a direct audience to young people within their regular work. And some LSEPs state that due to their engagement with young people being indirect and often static, they feel that their power and the element of audience is less noteworthy. So this suggests a correlation with the chronology of the Lundy model, and that the prior elements of space and voice are integral to successful incorporation of the elements preceding them, so audience and influence. And finally, influence. Within this research, the element of influence is implied to be an ongoing journey rather than a destination by LSEP coordinators. So with the limits imposed upon youth voice by COVID, the ideal conditions for embedding the element of influence are obstructed by the aforementioned areas of space, voice, and audience. So I'm going to go through some very quick conclusive recommendations that I wrote in my report. Firstly, to consider the further interconnected ideas of space, voice, audience, and influence through cultural opportunities and arts opportunities, and reflect upon those useful practices. To consider introducing / continuing the development of a youth voice board within each LSEP's programs, and to consider the benefit of including 1+ young person from 5+ partner / member orgs with the LSEP to discuss their views on youth voice and work within the current arts and culture opportunities, guided by the elements of space, voice, audience, and influence. And thirdly, to consider methods of sharing successful and sustainable practices with other LSEPs in the East Midlands on a consistent basis, allowing the collective progression of LSEP's youth voice work. And this would be really beneficial to consider as a viable suggestion as a youth voice board, for example, all the LSEPs in the East Midlands meeting up and discussing what's useful for them in the areas of space, voice, audience, and influence. So there is a bank of information there for future research and for future practice overall. So apologies for me speeding through that final part there, but I hope you enjoyed what I put together. I hope it was useful, and I hope you all have a really, really lovely rest of your day. Thank you all so much.